Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Nancy Drew, Season 4, Episode 3. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we have Nancy and Ace trying to break the love curse. They've attempted at the beginning, I think it was attempt 36 or something, but every attempt ended up failing. But this 37th attempt, if that is what it was, involved this particular doll that's got this demon sealed in a dark energy. It's part of what they need for a specific ritual to try and break the love curse. Well, complications arise when Birdie and Jesse, which I was like, why does Jesse look so familiar? Why does the name Jesse mean anything? It immediately clicked in my head. I was like, I felt so stupid. I guess because I've been away from the show for so long that it just feels, because I was about, it's not even like, oh man, there was no, none of, it's not even like, oh, none of, George's siblings popped up. They did, because of the whole engagement of it all. They were in last season, if I remember correctly. But it's yeah, I kind of didn't even think, I didn't even click in my head that that's oh yeah, because it's also, because they don't pop up that often. Obviously, they popped up a lot more in I think Season 1 and Season 2, but they only pop up periodically here and there. So I just didn't even click in my head. It took me a second to be oh yeah, Jessie, one of George's sisters. But her and Birdie, which they referenced the case that Birdie was a part of, the Fire Souls and the shipwreck and stuff. I was oh, I remember, but I don't remember Birdie fully. But I think this is going to be that interesting thing where kind of all worlds collide, because Birdie is someone who's going around school talking about the supernatural, and she seems crazy. One of her bullies is this dude, Avery, who constantly berates her about, hey, you're talking about the supernatural. Her parents don't believe her. No one else does. Jessie does, because Jessie knows the supernatural exists, because her sister's been steeped in that over the course of this entire show. I mean, plus your mom is on the more supernatural side of things as well, but we don't really touch on that's much anymore. But either way, so it ends up being that line that I think when it's all said and done, I believe by the end of this series, Horseshoe Bay will be aware of the supernatural, because that's always the interesting thing about this stories like this, where it's everyone's kind of oh, the supernatural doesn't exist. Avery's dad, I think his dad's name is Aaron, doesn't believe in the supernatural, and to the point that when Birdie and Jesse try to get Bess on their side, she on their side, she denounces and being yeah, it's just it's all for it's all steeped in superstition. It's not real. My immediate thought for her saying it's not real, she never really got an opportunity to explain, but my only assumption could be well, we don't want the world to know about the supernatural. People get a little panicky. The last thing you want is people to know that the supernatural is real, because they might be more tempted to go and utilize it. But maybe the argument could be, hey, if you don't know about the supernatural and don't believe it's real and just think it's superstition, you're going to most likely go off and do something crazy with something supernatural, because you think, oh, nothing's going to happen. It's just going to be just for laughs. It's just going to be for shits and giggles type of situation. And that could end up having massive ramifications. And that's kind of where Birdie and Jesse kind of are in their attempt to try and prove that the supernatural exists. They took something without even really paying attention to what it was, because they were hey, we're going to get proof for Avery. I mean, obviously Jesse knows Birdie's not crazy, knows about the supernatural, but also that's your girlfriend. Of course, when someone is chastising someone you care about, of course you're going to stick up for them, which even George didn't stick up for Jesse. But once again, it's that thing of our crew, with the exceptions of some people here and there who they've interacted with over the course of the series. Outside of that, obviously we have Carson and we also have Ryan, who know the supernatural exists. But other than that, most people in Horseshoe Bay have no idea all that's going on. It's just kind of oh man, this is some crazy thing that's happened. Even the cops have had to slowly but surely be convinced about, the supernatural. Once again, Home Dude from Season 2, wasn't he in Season 2? Yeah, I think Home Dude from Season 2, he dabbled in the supernatural, didn't he? Didn't he find out about it? I know Agent Park did, despite him trying to rationalize stuff, but even he kind of gave way to the supernatural and stuff like that. So, but yeah, like I said, it's still kind of a unknown-ish factor still in Horseshoe Bay. So, Avery ended up getting possessed, and now it's a situation of like, cool, we have to remove the demon from Avery, but we also have a limited amount of time because Nancy and Ace have already started up their preparations because there's like a protection sigil that Ace has to have put on him so that, and it only lasts for 24 hours, and it's very rare ingredients that if they don't do this now, they have like a one shot with this because they can't make the sigil again. So it's now or never, and they have like a 24-hour time frame, and so they have to get the demon back inside this doll, get it back, and utilize it as for its power so they can help break the curse. Problem is, when they put the demon back, cool, it broke the doll. Wait, we have another solution. There's actually a twin side to this doll, which I also love George bringing up the fact that she's like, yeah, of course, like, no one knows what to do with all that love and positive energy. Let's only focus on the dark energy because dark, you know, it's kind of very like light versus dark of like dark is all where all the power exists. It's like, yeah, but love and light and all that has its power too. But it's just like, nah, darkness is true power. You know, obviously you see that reflected in Star Wars, you see that reflected in Kingdom Hearts, that whole light versus dark. I mean, obviously it's implemented in like the basis of so many stories. It's in the fundamentals of a lot of stories, so every story really. But either way, I also love stealing the doll wasn't really that hard, to the point that Nancy was having trouble with the lock, and the moment Ace wasn't answering, I'm like, what happened? What happened? Oh, Ace already went in because the back door was unlocked. And he's looking at it, it's like, hey, maybe cosmically, things are falling in line to allow us to break this curse. It's the universe saying like, yo, you need to break this curse, and we're backing you. But then it's like, well, maybe the person behind who owns the store where the doll was just didn't lock it, but I was actually quite surprised that we got to this point where, like, all right, they're in the process of breaking the curse and everything. I was like, are we really doing this? I mean, it's episode 3. There's still 10 episodes left after. So I'm like, are we really doing this? It's like, I mean, because at least like season 1 to season 2, wrapping up the season 1 storyline at the beginning of season 2 made sense. It was a pandemic. You didn't get to finish out season 1 like you wanted to, so you got to finish that up at the beginning of the next season. That's what a lot of shows in particular, definitely CW stuff in particular, ended up doing. But regardless, I was thinking like, are we really about to do this? So it's like, what's the rest of the season going to be like for them? But I'm like, of course it's not going to be that easy, which is such a heartbreaking situation that, I mean, for one, it sucks that it didn't work. Like the moment it started like coming out, I was like, is it going to stop? Or like, there's just no way, like, it's not until they focus so much on the curse leaving, then I'm like, there's no way that this is just going to, work. And it turns out it's not, because Temperance, all the contingencies in the world to make sure her curse sticks, she screwed with it. So the flowers they needed, there was only one batch, and like Lily grew them specifically, but it turns out they were tampered with. Like Temperance set everything in motion. And maybe the argument could be if Nancy didn't hesitate. Well, who's to say Temperance didn't set this well up in advance and knew ahead of time that she was going to put Nancy in that situation? Because I was about to say, like, she hesitated and gave Temperance, maybe if she hadn't hesitated when she did, maybe she wouldn't have gave Temperance time she needed to set up all her contingencies. But like I said, those contingencies could have been set up even way before that, even before she showed Nancy that other vision, because if she already had that set up, that means she already knew in advance she was going to do that. But maybe the showing that hallucination to Nancy inspired her to be like, right, Nancy is who she is. She's going to try and break this curse. And that's when she had that opportunity to go do all this. Does it matter? No, because those contingencies were set up regardless of when she did it. But I think it's kind of poignant, and I think it's really interesting if we did know specifically when she decided to set up those contingencies. But yeah, their attempt to break the curse backfired, and it almost killed Nancy. And I think it's so interesting too that they were so concerned about Ace dying that it never crossed, because Ace is the one that was supposed to die, but now like the curse backlash, and now Nancy's the one that almost came close to dying, and now the shoe's on the other foot, because for Ace it's like, right, now I understand why you didn't want to tell me. Like, you dying in my arms was the worst thing ever. It's a thing of you were dying in my arms and luckily you're alive. In your vision, like your hallucination, I just straight up died in your arms. So It sucked. And it is sad because Ace is the one that pushed. He wanted this. He pushed for it. And Nancy wasn't the one that was on board until he pushed so much that she was. And now that she's like, yeah, I'm all in, he's the one backing out. And it is sad. It's like, yeah, you set me up for this. And now I'm walking away brokenhearted, because for Ace, it's like, we might as well just be friends. We can be in each other's life and we can still be around each other. We just can't be together in that capacity. We'll have to go back to being friends. Even saying we were in love with each other for so long, well, we like had feelings for each other for so long without ever saying it to each other. So we have to go back to that, because we learned, interestingly enough, the rape situation as we got to know over the course of the show. I mean, if I remember correctly, that was a season 2 situation. Yeah, specifically, because she was referencing like, hey, you were with, you went off to Amanda when I went to go talk to you after the whole rape situation, but that's when the rape situation is when she realized she had feelings for Ace. Ace has had feelings for her since high school, which I was like, oh, that's so interesting. Because I was like 3-4 years ago. I was like, but that's so interesting to know. Like, he's had a thing for her even back then. He's like, oh, yeah, that volcano thing. That's why he specifically referenced it when he was like, oh, yeah. Because she was like, oh, I didn't realize you took notice of me even back in high school. He was like, well, you always stood out. So I was like, that's actually kind of sweet, being like, oh, no, he's kind of had a thing for you for a couple years now. It's like, it's interesting. So that's always been there underneath the surface past like every situation that's happened, whether it's Nick or Agent Park or Gil, and in her case, Amanda. So them both kind of being like, oh, I was jealous of Amanda. It's like, oh, I was jealous of Gil. It's like they had that heart to heart. They were so open with each other. And then for this to be the situation, and especially how that ties into Carson's story is so interesting, because him and Gene are in a good place until Gene gets these 2 teacups. But the problem is they belong to like a set that Kate had, and he keeps them there. I wonder, does Nancy know about that? Because I think previously he, like, I don't think Nancy is as bound by like her grief and like everything that she's going through. I think she's taking steps moving forward when it comes to her mom's death. Granted, it's a very different dynamic than what Carson's going through. Both of them have this equal pain. It's just represented, and it's a different type of love that they had for Kate. Obviously, a mother and daughter's relationship is different than a husband and a wife, you know? Just any lovers type of situation, like, that's going to be different from a familial love. It's just as potent and just as powerful, but it's just a different type of love. And so it is that situation of, I wonder how Nancy feels about those teacups. Like, does she know that Carson still kind of keeps them there for them not to be moved? It's like, no, leave those where they are. I have some other, cups here for us to use. And Gene, talks to Carson later. It's like, right, you're not over Kate's death. It's like, it hasn't been that long. It's only been like a year, coming up on a year since she died. So it's like, you're going to have to deal with that grief at some point in time. You're still grieving, whether you deal with it now or later. And it's not until he almost lost Nancy that made him kind of go like, right, you need to move forward. Because she's like, you don't understand. He's like, I don't understand. I lost my person. I lost your mother. I lost my wife. I know what it's like to just have to sit back and watch someone die. Like, the fact is, you can't do anything about it. He couldn't do anything about it. All he could do is be there and try to support her. And Nancy is not, it's a supernatural thing, but it's still almost the same thing as a cancer, where it's like, we just have to accept it as it is. You can't change anything, because I lost her and I could not stand losing you. So you're going to have to let Ace go, because you almost died. They had a hard time stabilizing your heart. And, so I was curious about Home Dude, the way they were kind of introducing, once again, I think his name's Terrence. I kind of blank on that guy in the glasses, family, but, yeah, like, they were setting it up as a potential love interest, but I'm like, where is that going to go, considering, like, the Nancy and Ace of it all? I was like, right, if we're going back to being friends, you kind of put the kibosh on that relationship. So it might be a thing of maybe Ace starts dating just to force Nancy's hand, just to force her to move on. And it's like, is that really how this is all going to end? Will they have to, like, start dating in other capacities, or will Ace see her with Terrence and kind of get a little jealous but just kind of have to accept it? How that's going to play out, we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, they can, as Ace kind of put it, like I said, I think it's just so interesting that the shoe is literally on the other foot of season 3's finale, where, like Ace was all like, hey, let's be in a relationship. Nancy had to push away. Now Ace has to be the one to push away. And like I said, it's just, it's sadder because he's the one that's like, no, we can do this. We could do this. We have to, he's the one that wanted to know all the details. It's like, right. She now knows, she's like, I know what it's like for us to really kiss this time instead of just in hallucination. Cause even he was like, yo, we get to kiss for real this time. I mean, you've done this before in your hallucination, but it was the first time for me. And it was magical and they felt it, that love and that power as we kind of get all those like scenes over the course of the series with them. And it's just, like I said, it's just, it is kind of like, oh, damn it. It's like, because damn it, Ace, in the regard of, once again, you push Nancy for this, but I think at the same time, it's a good thing that you did. Because it's going to, I believe it's all going to work out in the long run. But at least with Nancy, I think staying in that place, bottling up your feelings, like she couldn't go on like that forever. We saw what that was doing to her in the first episode. So it's like she wouldn't have been able to keep that up for her. She'll probably like to believe she could have, but I don't think she could have. I think that would have blown up in her face eventually, you know? Kind of already did, but it probably would have gotten so much worse. And them being where they are now, having to go back to being friends, pretending like what happened between them didn't happen, is going to make them, Nancy's going to be off kilter, and so is Ace. Like, it's just, it's going, I mean, that group in general is kind of going through everything they're going through right now, so. Because we have the Nick and George of it all, because of the whole, like, hey, Jesse, I want to help her out. Like, hey, Nick, can you talk to her? And Nick was kind of hesitant, and even I was like, that is weird. I mean, that's not his soon-to-be sister-in-law anymore. None of them are, so it's kind of weird to ask your ex to, you know? I was like, because I was about to say, it was like, I've never had, because I've talked to a significant other's, like, youngest sister before, but I was like, it never came up after we broke up. Of course it wouldn't. And I don't know, I think that's weird. I mean, especially because at that time it's like, well, we're teenagers, not like we were engaged, we were just dating. You know, so it's just one of those funny situations. But, Nick kind of, well, because apparently Nick told Jesse that George has boundary issues, which George is like, whoa, like, and I guess it kind of is. I mean, once again, George is in this very complicated spot because of her upbringing. It's like, she had to be the mom for her siblings, so she's trying to do everything she can, and like, oh, if there's a problem, I'm trying to fix it, because she had to be more mom than sister a lot of times. I think even then, she's also trying to make up for that, because it's like, because I've been so busy with other stuff, I want to hang out with you more. I mean, granted, that was also because she's no longer working for Judge Abbott. She's trying to find a clerkship somewhere else, so trying to, like, you know, pull out fillers for that type of situation, but Nick even doubling down on, like, you do have boundary issues, because it's like, right, we're broken up, and it's already complicated enough that we own a business together, we co-own a business together, we also have to work together in, like, our friend group, and you're also asking me to kind of co-parent one of your sisters. It's like, I need space, which is totally understandable, like, because it still hasn't been, like, a long period of time. Like, once again, I believe it's only been, like, wasn't it like a month or two? I think they set that up at the beginning of the season. I think because I commented on it, like, it's only been like a month or two since the season 3 finale. So their engagement and breaking off was not that long ago. And you do need space during breakups, because I've talked about it before. I've made the mistake of staying friends with an ex. Instead of giving myself the time to process and heal, I stayed friends with them, and that led to a whole complication and fallout that didn't have to turn out that way. So it's like, not saying you can't be friends with exes, but you also have to, like, separate, because they're always going to be tied together, because, well, they're part of the same group, they have the same friend group, their friend group is so literally intertwined, because it is what it is, so. But I think it's so interesting, because I think what Nick said, George kind of, like, probably made it go, like, maybe it is a thing of, yeah, I do rely on you for a lot, Cause I think it's, I mean, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I would assume it kind of stems from George for so long having so many people rely on her that it felt nice for the first time, like, fully relying on another person to kind of figure stuff out with your sisters and just being able to lean on someone. And now that they're broken up, it kind of, like, she had gotten used to that dynamic, that he kind of became, like, a little bit of, like, the foundation to, like, stable out her life, that I think now that equilibrium's kind of off now because of that. So I'm curious to see where things kind of go on that front. Bess feeling guilty about the whole situation, about the Birdie and Jesse of it all, wants to teach them more about the supernatural. Whether that'll have a good spin to it, especially the way they set up season 3's finale about her taking over the historical society and what that kind of meant. Like, oh, that kind of played into Temperance's prophecy about the group and how they'll fall out. Now she's teaching Birdie and Jesse, and I feel like that's going to be an issue. It might be a thing of that's going to spread in and eventually turn into a lot of this episode. I mean, a lot of this season will probably play into the entire town finding out about it. But in particular, they had removed the demon from Avery, and he was Googling demonic possession and stuff like that. And Aaron blames her because it's like, hey, my son will get to know what I want him to learn, which is like, that's not how that should work. That's a complicated thing. Like, you should have the freedom, but I guess it's like, right, once you're out of high school, then you have the freedom to kind of go out there. But until then, you're under your parents' roof. You get to they decide what you get to know about the world and what you don't. So now he's pulling his funding, which is what Bess was really hoping for, because the historical society is on the chopping block, which I'm sure that's going to really push Bess into some complicated spaces going forward with all of this in conjunction. But, you know, we'll see what ends up being the aftermath of the whole Birdie and Jesse being taught about the supernatural world or not. Another angle to this episode is... another thing I have to go finish up is the whole situation with Carson. He's going to join a widower's support group because he wants to make things work out with Jean, but it's like, right, I need to kind of deal with my grief. I want to be a better person. I want to be the best version of myself for you. So it seems like that's going in the right direction, which is kind of, once again, just the parallels of like, or I guess juxtaposition, because I love that word, between Nancy and Ace's relationship being what it is and transforming into and falling apart in the way it is versus everything that's going on between Carson and Jean. So Nancy's relationship suffers and she's supposed to move on, whereas Carson had to move on from his grief, not move on, but deal with it and move on from Kate so that he can have a future with Jean. So, but going back to what I was saying, like, the only one that's in kind of a happy relationship, not kind of, in a happy relationship right now is Bess, because everyone else's situations are complicated, and that makes up 4/5 of their group, and so that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. And what kind of effect that has on the dynamic of that group. Once again, that equilibrium is going to be all kinds of jacked up. It has been for a while, but, you know, how that all fits together going forward, we'll have to wait and see. But there's also, I did like Nick kind of put into kibosh on one guy being like, yo, at the counseling meeting being like, yo, someone's digging up dead bodies, people doing rituals, thinking that the rituals were part of like the reason why, the dead bodies were part of the ritual and that's the reason why the tsunami happened. It's like, well, you're not too far off, but conspiracy theories, that won't do us any good. Let's come together and work on a problem, have real action. Which you're like, oh yeah, Nick, oh man, he's good. The guy's good. He's already been getting a lot of more popularity, obviously online and stuff. And now the guy's like, oh yeah, this guy's good. So the council wants to, you know, have him sit in, and because he wants to talk about the water situation, which they do offer a solution. Hey, let's shut off our water for a while, get it tested, and then like we'll borrow this other town Elseworlds. We talked to like the mayor or whatever, and they're willing to share the water with us. The main person at the council, oh God, what was her name? Wasn't her character's name PETA from I mean, obviously more recently Motherland Fort Salem on the TV show on which is just so interesting, too, because obviously, God, I'm blanking on the actress's name. She was Ada in the Winchesters, which is like, oh, you're both, like, sadly, that was short-lived, only one season, but also, like, she would be in it. And once again, just the connectivity. I wonder if they're both Canadian actors. Because obviously, like, this show, I mean, most CW stuff films in Vancouver, so that's what makes me wonder about that. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're American actresses. I don't know. Tangents and all that aside. She was the one that was all about Nick's idea, and then at the last second, she pulls a rug from underneath him and is like, yeah, we're not going to do that. They had conditions that were unfavorable, unacceptable, so we're not doing that. We're going to keep using our own water. And it's like, wait, no? we shouldn't do that. And she's like, yeah, take a picture with me. Yeah, here I am with someone from small business. And he's like, I'm not going to be a prop for you to use. She's like, oh, you have no idea the political landscape type of thing, which makes me feel like that's foreshadowing that maybe Nick is going to get into more council type of thing when it comes to town, and that it's going to end up, or at the very least, part of his story is going to like contend with the fact is he might have to get in the nasty political side of things, whether that's just him as a businessman trying to help make the city better or the town better, or whether that is him in some council position in the deals and negotiations that he has to make that can be very nasty and slimy and just part of that political, using whatever means you can to kind of get a leg up and put yourself in a more advantageous situation. But what we got at the end, though, is that she was talking to someone on the phone. She's like, yeah, I put the kibosh on that water thing. And it's like, so she didn't just do that out of nowhere. Because like I said, she seemed keen on listening to Nick. But someone's behind this, someone is orchestrating this whole thing. We still don't know what the bigger picture is, but the whole raising the dead body situation was to lead to polluting the water. Like I said, my thought was maybe they're after one specific person and they're trying to cover that up by making it seem like it's attacking the whole town, or maybe this is some horseshoe bay situation, because the whole notion of, with the whole Judge Abbott of it all, of, yeah, like, you don't know what doors you're going to be opening, what bodies skeletons are going to be in the closet, because you're going to be unearthing so much truth. Because we don't know what she was experiencing or what she saw at the end, but we see that the infection kind of spread on her neck as she was kind of getting affected by the contaminated water. So, who's behind all this, and to what extent, like, what are they trying to gain? We'll ultimately have to wait to see where the next episode ends up taking us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.